Hey, I'm James from Smoking at Bar-A-BBQ, and today I am trying to find out if the Masterbuilt XT not only can cook a great brisket, but more importantly, it can do it using my favorite brisket method discovery. Let's find out. In my unboxing and first look at the Masterbuilt XT, in the comments, it was an overwhelming vote. James, cook a brisket first. So naturally, I cooked ribs as my first cook. And I did that for a very important reason. One, with the price of brisket being so high, I didn't want to potentially have my first cook and some of those discoveries sacrifice a very expensive brisket. And I'm really glad I did, because I gained a bunch of important information. First, the biscuit test let me know that I have a very small, but about a 3-inch hot spot on the far left-hand side of the cook chamber where the exhaust manifold ends, and that heat can come straight up to the top, which is exactly what it does. I saw that on biscuits, the infrared test, as well as in my first cook with the ribs. I also was able to learn that I get very even heat distribution on the second, third, and fourth levels, and so by doing a low and slow cook that I want to, just like I've done on my 1050, place that on the second level. It's going to give me a little bit more clearance from the radiant heat coming off of the manifold directly below our brisket for a long, low, slow cook. And on the do better side, despite how good the flavor was and we were able to burn a real wood fire using full-size cherry splits, just like I would do in my offset, I did discover that the algorithm perhaps is not tuned for the amount of energy in a full-size split. And we sort of suspected that going in and absolutely confirmed it once we got the cook. And so I have restocked up on appropriate size wood. And whether you're following along on an offset, a Kamado, or something like a gravity series that I'm going to be using for today's test, the right size wood for the smoker that you're using can make a world of difference between success and failure. So now that we got that all sorted out, let me tell you about the brisket method that I am hoping, in fact, have already just gotten started on the Masterbuilt Gravity XT. So the method that I'm talking about, of course, is none other than the Bar-A-BBQ cold smoke method. And I learned of this from my friend Al at Eat More Vegans, or now Beyond the Food, and this one is an absolute game changer. When Al first posted that video at the beginning of the year, I've adapted it to a whole bunch of different smokers. I've done it in a Kamado, which typically cannot do cold smoke, as we get creosote, not good cold smoke. And the way that I overcame that is using a pellet tube. And this, hands down, has given me the best bark and smoke flavor in any Kamado that I've used before. I've been using them for now nearly 2 decades. I've also applied this successfully in my reverse flow and direct flow offsets and been blown away by the results. And I was a little surprised when I saw Jeremy from Mad Scientist Barbecue post so-so results with it, but as you can see in the comments, perhaps the fan that he had sitting directly above his smokestack increased the draw and didn't allow him to get cold smoke. Needless to say, I have not had any of the issues that Jeremy ran into when I apply the method exactly as Cooper shared in Al's video. So I'll be sure to put a link down below. And that is 100% our game plan for today. So to get started with Cooper's method in the XT, the way that I'm going to apply this is first starting a cold smoke fire. I'm gonna add a little bit of lump charcoal into my hopper, a fire starter, and use a torch to get that going and set the grill up for 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This is gonna give me a bit of a coal bed that I can later transition to a live wood fire. While that is coming up to temperature, I got to work at trimming up my brisket, and I'm also sticking with the Bar-A-BBQ seasoning here, where I went for some fresh cracked pepper using my pepper cannon, as well as the Fiesta Season It All salt. This is another tip that Cooper shared, is the common seasoning used across a variety of their cooks, and I was so curious I went and picked up a whole bunch of Season It All for myself. It tastes, in my opinion, pretty similar to my homemade rub, but if you're in a pinch, it's a great way to get amazing salt flavor along with a bunch of other complementary ingredients without the hassle of making up your own rub. So if you've been following along and said, I like doing all these things except maybe making my own rub for scratch, a combination of fresh cracked pepper and Fiesta Season It All is getting us to an amazing spot with very little effort. After I got my brisket trimmed up and seasoned, I inserted a meter probe in the flat as well as the point, and then started switching from charcoal to a live wood fire. And that is where we are right now. We are approaching the end of our 2 hours. I don't know if you can see behind me, I'm kind of blocking the temperature gauge here, but we have been at 160 degrees Fahrenheit for the past 2 hours of cold smoke, and now I want to start ramping up the heat and go for a hot smoke. So I'm going to stick with real wood all the way until the bark is set. You don't need to do this, but I want to get the absolute closest to an offset and see just how close the XT can come. And once our bark is fully set, if we're going to go to a wrap, I'm no longer going to get the benefit of burning more expensive wood. I'm going to switch over to charcoal once the bark is set and we later on wrap the brisket. My plan is to borrow another page from the food service industry, and one that was first applied to the backyard from my friend Steve Gao at Smoke Trails Barbecue. Steve had me as part of his team competing at Memphis in May earlier this year, where we applied this same method, where we're going to smoke things to a little bit below their desired finishing temperature. So on a brisket, I'm going for probe feel, not a temperature, but normally your range could be 197 to 211. Most people sort of land on 203 as the consensus temperature. We're always going for feel, not a temperature, but in this case, the temperature will be a little bit less. So 190 to 195 is when I plan to pull off this brisket, wrap it with some tallow, and put it in a holding oven or my household oven that I can manually reduce the temperature from its normal minimum 170 degrees to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and hold that all the way to tomorrow. We'll be ready for the taste test. Now that you're all caught up on the game plan, all I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day is adding wood and spraying with half apple cider vinegar, half water, to make sure that the bark isn't drying out and absorbing as much smoke as possible. And I will see you for the taste test. So while I might have to wait all the way till tomorrow, for you, it'll go by just like this. So our brisket has just finished now, 12 hours in the hot hold rest. Its total cook time on the XT was 8 hours. Now, I mentioned in my unboxing video that I hoped to use the XT as my holding oven, so I didn't have the unintended benefit or consequence, depending on which side you fall, of filling the house with the smell of hot brisket tallow in the oven. But as we had some rain come in last night, I was a little bit hesitant in terms of leaving this out and going through the rainstorm. And looking at the temperature chart, this is kind of an experience. If you've ever driven a modern car where it's got the lane keeping assist, and sometimes you find you're fighting with it to do the right thing and not crash into these parked vehicles off to the side. For some reason, it just decides it wants to kill you. That was a little bit of my experience with the fire temperature control on the XT. It actually did its best at the lowest temperature, 160 degrees Fahrenheit. It figured that out pretty well once we got going, adding 2 to 3 wood splits every 40 minutes or so, and it almost was holding near flat lines at 160. Where it really struggled is when I mixed the hopper as you would with wood and then charcoal, and then wood and charcoal, and sort of built layers so that I could get some smoke for the final stages of my cook. I even, another best practice, if you haven't tried that, added some wood into the ash collector, and that also takes advantage of those hot coals and embers falling down. It was able to provide supplemental smoke. But this seemed to be the stump the chump for the algorithm for no reason whatsoever. The temperature was continuing to accelerate. Even after I had sprayed and closed the cook chamber up, the fan and everything was running full blast, way beyond what I had set the temperatures to, all the way up into the 400 degree temperature range before it figured out I didn't want 400 degrees. And so this is a little bit of that same frustration I've had with a car that's trying to crash and kill me, a little bit of the same frustration with an algorithm that for some reason just doesn't seem to be able to figure out moments that you encounter when you're grilling, like opening the dome to spray your brisket, and it doesn't need to accelerate on the gas for 30 minutes after that and overshoot our temperatures. Good news is that is something that maybe over the air and firmware updates will adjust. But at this time, I've worked in tech for 20 years. I never review the promise of future tech and features. I review what I have available to me right now. That was not the strongest suit of the new XT. So does all that matter? Not if the brisket tastes absolutely amazing. Maybe we'll forgive it a couple points. Let's go over to the kitchen, slice into it, find out. Well, some of those negative thoughts I might be tempted to start forgiving when I look at what we have here. We've got nice, squishy fat cap, great texture in terms of the jiggle. Let's slice into it, see how we did. So I'm not even giving any squeeze to that. Looks like we did really well on rendering the fat in the seam. Flat looks equally exciting. Let's get a couple slices, see how we did on our tenderness. So holding up under its own weight, folding over and flopping nicely. Just the slightest tug and that's coming apart. I think we've nailed our tenderness. Let's get a couple slices for sampling. Time to dive in, see how we did. Start with our flat. Cheers. Tenderness, spot on. Melts in my mouth. Our flat, this is good. I can't wait to try our point. You don't need me to tell you though, that is incredibly tender and juicy. Wow. So I don't want to give the XT a free pass for the fine tuning of the software. I think that could do a better job, particularly if we need to interact with our food and spray it. But when the results are like this, it's hard to be left wondering, like, why does it matter? This tastes fantastic. The Gravity series has always done an amazing job, and I've tested a lot of different smokers, not all of them, so I don't want to categorically say this, but running a live fire, I think it's the closest thing to an offset. It is, don't get confused or don't hear, it is offset comparable. I burned one bag of those small wood splits where I would typically burn 3 to 4 full-size split bags in my offset, and I always use the term fuel is flavor, and you're not going to get the same flavor from one bag of wood versus 4 bags of wood used in an offset. But it's up there. It is remarkable that we are able to turn out this quality of smoke and take advantage of some of the automatic features, which did an amazing job on the cold smoke. So taking the Bar-A-BBQ method, combining it with the XT, something that we opened this video, can the XT do it? Absolutely. In fact, it did the cold smoking the best. The one area for improvement is when we need to interact with our food, whether it's to move to a foil boat or spray or anything like that, where we need to get in and out of the cook chamber. I would like to not see the algorithm power 200 degrees past where I've set it and take our temperatures up into a danger zone, but our brisket survived and it came out the other side absolutely remarkable. In fact, it's just staring at me. I gotta go for another piece while we're debriefing here. Cheers. Wow, this is fantastic. That doesn't get old. So we've answered the question now, can the new XT smoke? The second most popular question I had is, can it sear? So I think that's what I'm going to do next and see if this really is the all-around workhorse as a smoker and grill for the backyard. Let me know down in the comments though if there's anything else you'd like to see me put the XT through its paces. But to answer the question you asked is, can it cook a brisket? It can cook a mighty fine brisket. That's it for today. I'm James from Smoke Dad signing off. Be sure to check out the members live section. I go live once a month. And while you're checking that out, be sure to turn the notification bell on so that you are alerted of future videos when they come out. That's it for today. I'm James from Smoke Dad Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up. This is legit good.